Welcome to Trudge the Road. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023 or by going to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry, and I'm a sober alcoholic.
And Jerry, tell us, why do we do this show?
Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And every bit as important, family members, you suffered tremendously. I don't have to tell you that. And I know that you got a lot of questions. And that's what we're here for, is to do our best to answer some of those questions and with the good grace of God, provide a solution to this incredible dilemma, the disease of addiction to alcohol and drugs.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk to AJ. And AJ has an incredible story of
recovery.
Recovery.
Miracle. It's a miracle. And the beauty about AJ and the reason that we asked him to come here is that we've been able to watch his recovery, watch the miracle happen from the very first day he got here to today. And it's only been, I think, a couple of years. And it's just absolutely magnificent. And as you'll find out within those two segments, there are miracles. There are tangible miracles. And I'll say it then and I'll say it now, that if you've waited all your life to believe in miracles, to have to see one, you're going to experience it today, and that's a promise.
And we also have a very quick segment we're going to do here about honor in drinking. But first, I do want to remind you, you can catch this show on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube.com and put Trudge the Road Radio in a search engine, and it will come up. We also have a Facebook page. Once again, Trudge the Road Radio in the search engine. Or you could go to our Twitter feed, which is TTR Show, and catch the feed. I put stuff up there like daily messages. We post when we put the show up there and things of that nature. So we'd love a follow on that. But this first segment, a very short segment, but it's something we talked about the other day, honor in drinking. And that is where I'm a little confused by this, and maybe you can help us out, Jerry, is that when you're young and you get to college, it's like this big deal. You're loud, you're obnoxious, you love to hold your beer. Yeah, last night, man, we drank 2 cases of beer, dude. Between 3 of us, man, we're wasted. It's cool, you know? Mm-hmm. And you go to somebody's Facebook page and they're holding up a beer, and it's the coolest thing in the world. But in their 20s, maybe you can even get away with it because you still have that little fratty thing going, you know.
Well, it's that passage. It's that passage from adolescence into adulthood. You know, I'm showing you now that I'm an adult. I'm a big guy. I've got a drink and I'm partying. You know, that's kind of what it is.
And then you get in your 30s, and then everybody's starting to kind of look at you a little with a hinky eye, you know, because you've got a shot glass as your Facebook picture. And by the time you're in your 40s, really, at this point, are you holding up a beer? What is it with honor in drinking?
You know, at that stage, I really think that the honor has left. I mean, it is now who I am, and the only thing that I am able to relate to personally as a human being that I can show you is this person who is intoxicated. Because when I'm loaded, when I've got the alcohol and the drugs in me, the fear is gone, the self-esteem is high, and everything is good. You know, because alcohol takes away all of my problems. It's not, alcohol and drugs aren't our problem, they are the solution to our problems. So when we're in that state, everything is good in our mind. Of course, it is exactly the opposite, but it's the mature, immature factor. And again, the fact of the matter with this disease, and you cannot escape it. If you have the disease of addiction, this is a fact. You are immature and you are a perfectionist. That maturity level stops when you start. That is when it ends. So many of us who get here when they're 35 or 40 years old emotionally function still as if we were 15 or 16 years old. And that perfectionism, we're accused constantly of giving up or not being able to complete things. Again, it's part of the pathology. Perfectionism. If it isn't perfect, then I just give up on it and move on to try something else that I can be perfect at. Now, when it comes to drinking and drugging, well, I'm really good at that, and it changes that complete perception in my mind, and I'm making the insane assumption that it's changing the perception in your mind. That here I am in my late 30s with a glass of beer in one hand and a shot of whiskey in the other hand, screaming and yelling and completely out of control. Well, you look at that and say, that man is out of his mind. And you know what? You're right. That man is out of his mind. Because what you're looking at, this 40-year-old man, is actually a 15-year-old kid. And that is how 15-year-olds or 20-year-olds, however, And that is how young people in that post-adolescent stage into adulthood express themselves.
And is it that's all they have in their life at that point? Like in my case, if you were to go to my Facebook page, I get pictures of my kids up there and and maybe my work, because that's who I am now.
Right.
Not once again, I'm not casting judgment on anybody who's doing it, because I'll be honest with you. You know, I didn't get clean and sober until I was in my 30s. But before that, if you were to ask me, or in social circles, what was the number one topic that I would bring up? How wasted I got the night before, or what I was doing, or what drug I was doing, or how much of this I consumed. I was in that mindset because that's who I was, and that's the only topic that I could really speak credibly on.
In my own sociology, while drinking and drugging, that was always the topic of conversation, was drinking and drugging. You know, do you remember that time I, got this wasted by doing that drug? Oh, yeah. And then this time I took that drug and this happened. And it's all the circumference of our being, of our emotional well-being, the circumference of our emotions is strictly surrounded in it's that cycle that continues and continues and continues.
Well, if you have a comment on this, all you have to do is go to our website, trudgetheroadradio.com. That's trudgetheroadradio.com. You can send us an email, Jerry an email, myself an email, Matt the producer an email as well. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Karen Treatment Centers. Karen's a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Karen specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023 or go to their website, Caron.org. That's CARON.org.
Coming up is AJ, and his story is phenomenal. Listen, around here, we do not meet people by accident. They are meant to cross our path for a reason, and a reason you're going to completely understand, I believe, here in just a moment on Trudge the Road Radio.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry sits down and talks to AJ, an addict in recovery whose addiction began with food and accelerated from there. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new phase of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Trudge the Road Radio. Trudge the Road is sponsored by the Karen Treatment Centers. Karen is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. With treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, in Florida, and Texas, we have offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. You can reach Karen by calling 800-854-6023, or may I recommend you go to their website. All kinds of wonderful information and answers to your questions. It's at Caron.org, and we spell that CARON.org. We're getting a lot of response from around the world, and we really appreciate that. Please continue to do so. If you're listening on YouTube, pass it along. As a matter of fact, in your meetings, when you get to those non-AA related announcements, if this is not on a local radio station in your market, tell everybody about Trudge the Road on YouTube. If you just go to the search engine on YouTube and type in Trudge the Road Radio, all of the episodes will pop up, and you'll hear from some remarkable people, including John Hyatt, who was on a couple of weeks ago, and we're incredibly grateful for his participation. Future Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, and his story is absolutely magnificent. To continue with a story of magnificence, we have a guest, and when we choose a guest from the recovering community to join us, we always focus on somebody who we've been able to watch from the beginning. And the young man who is with me today, we were there the day he poured himself himself in and have watched his recovery and watched the miracle of recovery, the 12 steps, work in his life. AJ is with us here. AJ, thank you very much for being part of the program.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a little bit about your story. If you would, you have had a battle that is really second to none, and it began really before you found drugs and alcohol. That's kind of where it finished off.
Definitely.
You're from the Philadelphia area, New Jersey, and you grew up in an Italian family in an Italian neighborhood where the culture is still very much appreciated and respected, and that plays a little bit of a role in how that you grew up and some of the values that you got in life. Not that they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it does play a role. And I want you, if you could, to explain a little bit about your life growing up, what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now.
Growing up as a kid, I was a normal family, and like you said, it was the Italian culture, and we were very close, and we grew up in South Jersey. And as a kid, I can remember back to like when I was like my son's age. He's 7, and I remember just not feeling right. And it had nothing to do with my family. It just had to do with me. And from early on stages, I found myself, I was a heavy kid. I was a heavy set kid, and and my family was always eating. If you had a something was wrong with you or something's going on, food will fix it.
And again, part of somewhat to the Italian culture,
right? Definitely. It's like, here's a problem, and here, have a sandwich or something, and that was kind of how it was, but I didn't know any different, and so a lot of the ways that we were taught was just, our family was heavy, my brother's heavy set, my mom was heavy set for years. My dad was a big guy in high school, but then he lost weight, and he's a little guy now. But my addiction in that way was in our family,
Let me go back to a comment that you made when we first started, that something was wrong. You knew something was wrong when you were a child, couldn't pinpoint it, but deep down something was amiss.
Right. It's hard to explain, but it was just something was definitely missing. Like, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere.
Kind of that hole that we talk about.
Definitely that void.
And you found that food kind of filled that, at least for a minute.
It did fit. It did the job for a long time.
And there were consequences to that.
Big time. And I was a heavy set kid. I remember playing midget football. And my best friend, his dad was the coach, and that was the only way I got onto the team, because it was a 70-pound football team for the midgets, and I was like 110 pounds, and that was like 9 years old. So I was a big kid, and so I would go through that, and it was just hard. It was hard to always be that outcast, and always being chosen last for teams and stuff like that,
And I think for people who are listening, it's important for them to realize that maybe if they had a weight issue, or can remember back into those very young years, that kids who had weight issues were a target.
Big time. And I always was picked on. I was always called out on things, and I just never felt like I was never good enough, And so I would fill that void by eating, and also in my family, everything's a learned behavior that we go through, and that was my learned behavior, and it came along with a lot of different things. And a big thing I learned was, from early on, my grandparents, they were big time in my life. My mom and dad would work; they both worked, and so I would spend a lot of time with both my mom and papa in South Jersey. And I just remember seeing a lot of things, like my grandfather was very verbally abusive and sometimes physically abusive to my grandmother, and so that hit me from a young age, and like I said, learned behavior. My father, I grew up with that too, that's what he learned, and that the verbally abusive stuff, it was a big part of what I knew, screaming and kind of yelling in the family was normal, that was our norm. And so I would just kind of hide myself with food. So that went on. And
is it safe to say that you would isolate yourself, take food, find comfort temporarily in it? Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
And I remember going down as a kid to, in the middle of the night, going to get something to eat and stuff like that, and just, doing it. I would do it kind of hiding. Like, I would see myself, like, I look back on like my addiction and how I would isolate and hide from that. I did that when I was a kid. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I remember myself doing that. And it was it was hard. It was just hard. I would, music, talk about music. I love music, and that was my thing. I'd isolate and listen to music and do my own thing, and that's what I did. You know, I had one best friend in the world, and he, you know, we grew up, and he was always stood by me, and you know, he never judged me, and it was never, you know, oh well, AJ's the fat kid, you know. No, he always stuck by me, and it was just me and him. But other than that, my brother and I, we were close. But when I was younger, he's 5 years older than me, so he would kind of pick on me and stuff, you know, just brotherly type stuff. But we were always tight because he knew he was a heavy guy too, so he knew what I was going through. But
so at a very young age, you're isolating from society. You basically have one person to communicate with, an unstable family life, and here is this food and this isolation that will, along with the music, bring you that temporary relief.
Right.
You know, now the consequences of that behavior were quick and devastating.
Very much so, and not like I didn't have like a bad childhood per se. I didn't, you know, I didn't want for anything. You know, my dad always worked. He worked a lot, you know, mostly second shift when I was younger. And so, I mean, my parents are great people. They really are. And the way, like I said about the learned behavior, that's just something we knew, you know, and that's something he knew. And
it was part of the culture.
It was part. It really was. And, you know, I moved up to Pennsylvania in 1995. And when that happened, I was devastated, to be honest with you. My dad took a job. He was working, and he decided to relocate us. And I was like 14 years old, you know. And I was, when I say devastated, I was devastated because, like I said, I left everything I knew. I left that comfort zone of my family, my grandparents, my best friend. I left all of that, my neighborhood, exactly, everything I knew, you know. I moved from South Jersey to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and that was a culture shock.
It's a dramatic culture shock.
Huge. Yeah. And the mentality of the people, the area, the food, I mean, ridiculous. It wasn't Italian. The bread was horrible. And it just, I mean, that was a big part of my life, you know? So when I did that, when I was 14 years old, going on to 15, that's when my disease really took over. And I was a hot mess. I really was. I learned at that time how lonely I actually was. I started a new school. I started 8th grade, and when I started that school, I wasn't accepted by anyone. I had, like I said, Jersey mentality, and I really wasn't accepted at all. I was heavy set.
When you say heavy set, how heavy set were you at this time?
I had to say at least 250, 275, 8th grade.
That's a lot of weight.
I was a big kid, and I'm not that tall, you know. I'm 5'6", actually 5'5". I shrunk an inch, but you know, that's a big kid. You know, I was a big boy. I was always husky clothes. I remember my mom would go through hell trying to find, you know,
trying
to find clothes. Exactly, and it was ridiculous. I remember my pants, because I was short. I would always have to wear we'd have to get the husky pants, and I'd have, you know, long pants, and I had to get them roll up cuffs or get somebody to hem them, and it used to drive me nuts. And so when I moved up here, started going to school, and I felt so out of place, and I tried my best to care about school and to get an education, but honestly, I couldn't focus. It was total cloudiness in my head. It was anxiety is what it was. It was fear. Anxiety. It was fear. Right. It was huge fear. Panic attacks started. I started going to therapy because I started having you know, like crazy thoughts and stuff that I would have never thought would have came out, you know. And so I started going to therapy and stuff, and it really didn't work. It didn't work, you know, because they would sit there and tell me I understand, and it just I didn't feel it, you know. And
the point is they didn't understand.
They didn't. Right. They had no clue. They had no clue, honestly. And you know, time went on, and I would eat to hide my pain, basically, and I would isolate, and I would cry all the time, be up in my room because I missed my home, you know. I missed my friends and my family. And my brother didn't move up in 95, which that killed me. Mm-hmm. It really did. He graduated high school, stayed down there for a girlfriend, you know. And so that really killed me. I didn't have my best friend. I didn't have my brother. He's another best friend of mine. And, you know, I just
level
didn't have
of separation
that.
anxiety.
Right. My dad was working. My mom was working. And I was just totally alone. Yeah. And, you know, I would come home. We had a dog. And I would just come home from school. I remember just coming home and just being by myself. I would turn on music and me and the music would just chill in the room. You know?
And that's, you know, how old are you at this time?
15.
15 years old, and your best friend is a dog.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that speaks volumes.
It's volumes, I know.
Right there. You continue to eat and you continue to grow,
Right.
and it got to an extremely unhealthy level.
Very extreme and very unhealthy. And so when I was 15 years old, I was down in Jersey for New Year's with my best friend, and I knew he was drinking. You know, I knew that's what he was getting into, some stuff. When I left, he kind of went downhill too, because like I said, we've been best friends for 25 years. We have a connection, and it's not just friendship, you know, and he's an alcoholic as well, and he goes to meetings and stuff, and so it's kind of interesting because we were best friends from a little age, and we always had this bond. I never knew what it was until we got older.
Right.
It was just an amazing connection, you know, and so I went down there for New Year's Eve, and I was at my godmother's house actually, and I just told her this actually 2 weeks ago for the first time. You know, I told her that my first drunk was in her basement, and this lady is my spiritual advisor. You know, she really is. She's a wonderful woman, very religious, and she's helped me through everything, and she's been there since I was a baby up until all my whole life, and she's seen it from day one. And so that was my first drink when I was 15 years old in the basement. I remember we took a ride and just happened to see one of my brother's friends. And I was like, oh, wow. I knew he drank, you know, because my brother and him used to drink together. So I was like, oh, and he was older than me. You know, he's 5 years older. So I knew he can go get liquor. And he knew people. And so we went and got 2 huge bottles of Absolute vodka. And we had Fresca in the basement of my Aunt Marlene's house, okay? So we had like big cups. I'm talking like even like huge red Solo cups, but big, with half vodka and half Fresca. This is the first time I drank, and we killed both of those bottles within a night.
It's people talk about, you know, how do we start? We were born with this disease, you know, and it's just add alcohol, and it seems that we just can't stop. Some of us, even from the beginning, as is, you know, your story right here. I'm going to make the assumption that you found relief in this.
I did.
Found the cure, found the magic.
You know, I thought food was great, you know, but I found alcohol, and it was like, wow. It was like, okay, I'm okay right now. This is cool. Now, I'm not thinking about it, stopping the wheels from turning and the committee from going on in my head.
A little bit. All right, the committee that's going on in your head, try to explain a little bit to folks who don't have this disease what that's all about. Well, in your own words, don't worry.
For me, it's just that I felt like nobody understood. Nobody got what I was saying. I always felt like they looked at me like I was crazy. You know, the stuff that would come out of my mouth, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" You know, that's how I felt. I just felt completely alone, just completely alone, and I didn't feel like, if you want to put it in this perspective, like I wasn't the cool kid. I wasn't any of that. I was the fat kid, and I just wasn't that person. You know, my attitude on life was like, I'm not worth it, and I'm never good enough, and any of that stuff. So when I drank, I was cool. I was worth it, and I didn't care about anything that I was going through in my life, that I was getting made fun of and picked on every day, and that didn't matter to me when I was drunk. And
can I simply put it this way, that you put alcohol in your system and the pain went away?
It did go away.
That's the disease.
That warm feeling came over me, and I was like, wow, there you go.
See, that's the difference between the non-alcoholic and the alcoholic, is that the alcohol took away all of your problems. That's the disease. People who don't have this disease can drink like that, and they still have the same problems. Our problems are relieved. Now, we're at a point here we want to take a break, but let me ask you, how big are you at this point physically?
Right now, I'm about 225.
About 225, and it's going to get bigger.
What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It's a lot bigger.
All right. We're gonna talk more about that. And coming up, this is AJ. He is our guest here on Trudge the Road. And Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus relapse programs and outpatient services. Listen, if you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, call. They understand. 800-854-6023. Go to the website, Caron.org. That's CARON.org, and find out all kinds of information. And we appreciate them sponsoring Trudge the Road. We'll be back with AJ in just a moment here on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry continues his discussion with AJ. His addiction accelerates from food to opiates. That's next on the Trudge the Road radio network.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road Radio. My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic, and Trudge the Road is sponsored by the Cairn Treatment Centers. Cairn is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philly, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 800-854-6023. I promise you the person on the other end of that phone is going to understand. And what they'll most significantly understand is the pain that you're going through, whether you're an addicted person yourself or there's someone in your life who is addicted. Also, the website, Caron.org. That's CARON.org. And that's what Trudge the Road Radio is all about, dedicated to people who suffer from this horrible disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And, of course, you family members and friends, you suffer just as much, and in some cases, more. We know you've got a lot of questions. We hope to provide some answers on this program, and with the good grace of God, a solution to this incredible dilemma. My friend AJ, who I've had the privilege of being here and watching him recover from this malady one day at a time. I was there on day one, and we're still here, and his transformation and the miracle of recovery is just what a gift for me to be able to watch this. It's just tremendous. Let's pick up kind of a little where we left off, AJ. You've gotten to the point where you've discovered alcohol, and that seems to be relieving the pain and anger in your head on a temporary basis and giving you, and as crazy as this sounds, but it's true for us, the opportunity now to become part of life. Because it has taken away that fear, that anxiety, all of those questions. What we call alcohol liquid courage. I'm sure some of you have heard to it, have not used that yourself in referring to it. Now you've begun to meet some people. I believe you have found a girl, and you have found some acceptance that you can tolerate and maybe even enjoy a little bit, as long as you're under the influence to a certain degree. Right. Pick up and tell us where you are right now and the change that's going on.
Like I said, I met my wife, and at the time, she's my girlfriend, and that was senior year in high school. And from there, that was my first experience. I was like, wow, a girl likes me, right? And I'm just going crazy.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And like I said, I was a big guy, and she fell in love with a big guy, which was just totally blew my mind. Mm-hmm. And so I was 17 years old, 17 going on 18, and that started our relationship, and I've been with her ever since, and married 8 years. So from that point on is where, our relationship went. She moved in with me, and I went to school for printing, and I got a job in printing, got out of high school, and graduated by the grace of God, and went on and didn't like printing too much because I wasn't getting my way again. It wasn't perfection like we were talking about. And so I went and got my CDL, and through all this time drinking, working all the time drinking. And obviously I was working, so I wasn't smoking too much weed, mm-hmm. that was, testing kind of stuff like that,
Right.
And so, I would drink on the weekends. Basically, I was a weekend warrior, if you want to call it that, I got my CDL, and it got worse because my addiction got worse. Being on the road truck driver, you're not eating healthy. You're sitting there, you're drinking. On the weekends, I would get off Friday. I would drink until like Sunday and then go back to work Monday. Mm-hmm. And that was my life. And we got married in 2004 and bought a house. We had our son. And like I said, we had issues from the start. We really did, just because of the way I was. I didn't know how to treat a woman. I didn't know how to be a husband. I didn't know any of that stuff. I knew how to get out of myself and not. I didn't know how to take care of anybody else because I didn't know how to take care of myself.
Exactly.
And that's the reality.
Didn't even know who you were.
I didn't know who I was. So, the relationship came and it was awesome. We did have some good times, but a lot of those times were horrible because of me. and the way I treated her and my just my attitude and my anger, and because I was still upset. I was making great money as a truck driver. I really was. I had a house and we had a baby on the way, and
the American dream.
Everything didn't mean anything.
And you were miserable.
Absolutely miserable. And I took it out on her. I took it out on my family and everything. And I did have the American. I had the house, I had the truck. Everything was good except me. I wasn't good. And so in 2007, I had actually 2005 I lost my job driving tractor trailer. I got so heavy that I had sleep apnea. I fell asleep in Ohio and I wrecked my rig, and it was lucky I walked away from that.
When you say you're heavy, how heavy are you
at this point in time? I was 450.
450 pounds.
Yep. And which was kind of insane because I was getting in and out of a tractor trailer like all the time, and I don't know how I was doing it. I really don't. I always felt this is how I felt. I felt like I was a skinny man trapped in a fat man's body. That's how I felt, and because I would just do crazy stuff, and people would look at me like, "How are you doing this?" And that was me.
So is it safe to say that with these times in this skinny man in the fat man's body, did the alcohol make that a reality in your head? Was that true?
Yeah, it was.
All right,
very true.
Now you've come to a point where you're going to address your weight, and that is going to significantly open up some other issues.
Yes, definitely.
Tell us about that.
So in 2000, like I said, 2005, I wrecked my truck. So I was off work. And I got heavier sitting home, and I was drinking and just being by myself. My wife actually picked up and went to work, and that's how we kept our house. I had applied for disability because I couldn't work. I couldn't move around. 450 pounds, I was a big guy, and so sitting around at home, that's what I was doing. So I got really bad. 2007, I started checking into getting a gastric bypass surgery, and I went and. I failed a couple times because the insurance wasn't picking it up and stuff like that, but finally got to the point where they were going to cover it. So I was like, this is awesome. This is going to change my life. I'm finally going to lose weight and be able to get my life back together.
I'm going to fix myself
again.
On the outside and
exactly.
love it, right?
And that so I can be able to be the dad that I needed to be. My son was at the time he was like 2. Yeah.
At the time that you are having the surgery, how big are you now?
When I got the surgery, I weighed in, it was 600 pounds.
600 pounds.
600 pounds the day of my surgery. And it was October 22nd, 2007. So I got the surgery done, went in, and everything was good. 2 weeks later, the suture split my bowel, and I got really septic inside. And last thing I remember was it was close to Halloween, 2007. I woke up New Year's, after New Year's.
That long you were out.
It was 3 months in a coma. 6 months in the hospital the first time, and multiple surgeries within that time. And it strung on. My parents would tell me that they'd get a call at 3 a.m. That I'd be needing surgery, and the doctor, do we have permission to go in? And so they would keep going in and going in. So by the time I left the hospital, at that point, it was probably like 15 surgeries out of that time. And I had an open wound in my belly. I looked like it looked just
Frankenstein.
Definitely. It was horrible. It was the worst thing anybody's ever seen. The doctors, they were like, we'd never seen anything like this.
Right.
Never.
Now, what come along with this was, of course, pain medication.
Yes.
Now, they don't know, nor do you, that you're an addicted person.
Not even.
No.
My addicted personality. This is, and at first I was in pain, laying in the hospital.
Sure.
I woke up out of my coma. I had nerve damage in my leg. Took me a year and a half to walk again. I had to wear like one of those little braces on my legs, when I got out of there, on my leg. And when I first woke up out of my coma, they were shooting me up with fentanyl every 10 minutes. And that's what I was on. I was on a morphine drip too, and they were shooting me up with the fentanyl and then Dilaudid. And so I didn't even realize, but by the time I got out of that hospital, I was addicted to opiates. And I didn't realize it. So I got out, and they gave me, the pills, and I was on oxycodone 5s for a long time.
It's a very strong medication.
Yeah, and it got to not being that strong at all.
Tolerance.
It went from I was in pain to I started liking the feeling because I got out of myself because I was just laying around in a hospital bed in my parents' house. Because at this time, my wife and I were split up, and because she couldn't take me anymore, which I don't blame her because I was a monster. And so she finally came back and was helping me and stuff. And, was trying to help me get through this, and my mom was in control of pain medicine at first, and so it was cool. And then my wife and I decided we moved the hospital bed back to my house, and that's where we went. So she was in charge of my medicine at first, and then after that it kind of went downhill because I knew where the medicine bottle was, and after a while I was able to get around and start to using it, and so it went from I started on oxycodone 5 milligrams. I ended up on oxycodone 30 milligrams. I was on MS Contin 120 milligram pills. I had like 4 different doctors. I had all kinds of. I was on Klonopin and all kinds of stuff. And at first I was taking them regularly, and then I started sniffing them. And,
for those, let me just explain for those folks that it works a little better. It's a little more dramatic, the effect of the pills if we crush them up and snort them. As you would maybe assume somebody who's snorting cocaine, except you're snorting an opiate.
And that's where it started going. I would never thought in a million years, like I said, I had doctors, but I was also buying drugs off the street too. And my dealer was one day, he's just like, here, he's like, try it, do it like this, it'll hit you better. And I'm like, oh, okay. So from that point on, it was crazy, and it took me to a place I would have never thought. I didn't care. I thought I didn't care before. I definitely didn't care now. I had my wife, I had my son, and I cared about nothing. I didn't even go to my parents' house. I didn't show my face because honestly I was ashamed, and it just took me to a place I would have never imagined. I was selling drugs. I was selling because the MS Contin pills didn't work because I had 24 surgeries, and within that surgery they had taken out a lot of my intestine and stuff like that. So the MS Contin was a long acting drug. It wasn't instant release. Right. The time release.
I want what I want when I want
exactly.
it. Right.
So the time release didn't work for me. So I said, okay, so I'll sell these, and I did. I was getting good money for them, and I was making good money on them, and that went away because as soon as I started making that money, I would buy what I needed, and then that's where I went. So everything went out the window.
So we'll just catch up. You're in full-blown opiate addiction now.
Full-blown.
Total addiction. You've got a family here that is really secondary, if even reasonably conscious of their presence, because when you're this high, it's really impossible to think of anybody but yourself. That selfishness and self-centeredness, which, by the way, is the root of our problems. This is taking over your mind, your behavior, your emotions, correct?
Definitely.
All right. And the repercussions of that have got to be pretty serious.
They were really serious. And it got to the point where I became physically abusive to my wife when I would withdraw. I couldn't get as high as I did the first time when I started using, and so I would detox myself
to be able to be high again. Yeah,
I did it the first time because my doctor cut me off, so I had to go find another doctor. And my brother was living with me at the time, and he saw all this, and he knew something was wrong, but he really never judged me, and he didn't come. He knew I went through hell. I really did. And
the reality at this stage is, and I know your story, is you are taking a lethal amount of opiates daily.
My body was starting to shut down. It really was. And I was holding so much fluid. It was crazy. I went through a 30-day script in 2 days. I mean, that of oxycodone 30s. I mean, that's a problem.
So basically, you've got a family probably waiting for you to die.
Basically. Yeah. And, I remember it was right before... I'll never forget it. I talked to my brother, and he called me. He had moved out at this time, but he called me, and we were talking. And I said, John, I need help. I knew it. I knew I needed help, and it got to the point where I had another surgery coming up, and I knew it right before I went into rehab. I had a surgery, and I was like, I gotta get this surgery done, but I need help. I don't know what to do, because every time I would go back in for a surgery, the pain meds wouldn't work.
Right.
They wouldn't work. They wouldn't work. The doctor shut my one last surgery that right before rehab. He was shooting me up with morphine. They used 5 needles, full syringes of morphine, and it didn't help because the wound that I had on my stomach area, it was that painful, but they couldn't help me. They didn't know what to do. They had no idea because the medicine was not working. And so I'll never forget it. I told him I needed help, and my 2 friends that I met in high school, senior year, they were good friends of ours, and they would come over, and we met back up with them years later at the high school, and so they saw how bad I was. They would come in and see how my wife was distraught. She had bruises on her, and she was in bad shape, mentally and physically, and It's because, when I was withdrawn, when I had the drugs and alcohol, I was good.
Mm-hmm.
When I didn't have them, there was a problem.
Exactly. Again, to reiterate, they're not our problem. They're the solution to our problem.
The drugs and alcohol are my problem. I'm the problem. They were the solution, and they stopped working. And then I turned into a monster, complete monster, and I didn't care. So they saw that, and I didn't know, but they were planning an intervention on me, and so that happened. But I do. A lot of people don't remember their last drunk. I remember mine. And it was right after I got off the phone with my brother that night. I got so out of control, out of my mind. And I just got my script. And my wife decided to take those scripts. It was like 3 bottles of oxycodone and Soma and Klonopin. And she took them in the bedroom and locked her and my son in the bedroom. I was irate. So I went and I got my gun. And I loaded it. And I cocked it. And they're in the bedroom screaming and crying. And I'm kicking the door in to go in to get my medicine. And just by, that's where it took me. I was going to go in and harm my wife and son, who I love dearly, to get high. That's what I was going to do. And by the grace of God, I looked at my phone. It was my mom. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I just totally snapped out of it. I don't know why, but then the next day...
But the grace of God, you already answered the question.
Exactly. And that's and I walked away, and I was just totally upset, and I walked away, and then she wound up leaving, giving me the pills, and then the next day, my friends, I went to go cop drugs in the city, and I came back, and my brother calls me. It's like 10 o'clock at night on Saturday night. I'm like, why are you calling me, And he's like, "Where are you at?" I said, I'm on the way home. He's like, "Okay." I get there, my mom's there, my brother's there, my 2 friends are there. And I'm like, here we go. You
knew it was coming.
I knew it right away.
Right.
And the funny part was I just talked to my brother the day before, and I said, "I need help, but I don't know what to do. I'm having this surgery coming up." So I go inside. He didn't want to look at me at first. He just didn't. He just had his head down because he didn't want nothing to do with it.
Sure.
He didn't. And because I was irate.
Out of your mind.
I was out of my mind, out of control. So he was there because my friend Tim called him and said, we want to go help your brother, but we're a little worried that he's going to fly off the handle.
Exactly. And become, you obviously are volatile, you're violent, you're dangerous at this time. You're dangerous.
So.
And it's being a victim of the disease. We're at a point now where, you've summed it up so well, the stress, the anger, the anguish, the family. This is addiction. This is the disease. And see, I know you clean and sober. That is not who you are.
Right.
And we'll prove it next by what happened with the miracle of recovery. You're listening to Trudge the Road. AJ is my guest. I'm a sober alcoholic named Jerry. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, specializing in men's and women's services as well as young adult male and female programs. We have relapse programs, outpatient services. If you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, there is a person at the other end of this phone number who understands your pain. That number is 800-854-6023. The Caron website is simply that, CARON.org. This is Trudge the Road Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry completes his talk with AJ as we find out how he has found recovery and how it's given him hope for the future. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new phase of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trudge the Road. I'm Jerry, a sober alcoholic. My guest is AJ. Fascinating conversation is going on right now. Tip of the hat to the Caron Treatment Centers. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron, and they are a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females. They have relapse programs, they have outpatient services. Listen, if you're concerned about yourself, if you're concerned about a loved one, there is a person at the end of this phone line who absolutely understands your pain and will do best they can to answer the questions that you've got, which is our purpose here also. That phone number is 800-854-6023. The Caron website is caron.org, and it's a wonderful website with a lot of information. AJ, you've kind of left us hanging here. It's a very exciting point. Here in your life, you are being intervened on because of your incredible addiction to opiates and to alcohol. You have a family now who is confronting you, and this is, for many of us, the most horrible place we have ever been in life up to this point, because the truth is out. They know, you know, they know, but you're not even quite sure in your own mind if this is really a problem, the fact that I'm taking 10 bottles of opiates a day.
Right.
You know?
Right.
All right, here comes the intervention.
All right, so I get my friends are there, my mom and my brother are there. My wife wasn't there, and I was like, well, where's she at? And they're like, you know, after a while, I'm like, for obvious reasons, she didn't come because it would have been a total disaster, you know. So they said you're going to treatment tonight. And I said, I don't think so. And they were like, yeah, you're going to go to treatment tonight. And then I started thinking, and I'm like, you know what? I was pissed off. I was irate because I'm like, it wasn't that I wasn't able to drink or drug anymore. You know what it was? It was that I had to change. Mm-hmm. And that was the fear of the unknown.
Exactly.
And that's what it was. It was a huge thing for me. It was like I had to change. And I'm like, wow, this is real right now, you know? And for the first time, I totally gave. It wasn't like a kicking and screaming type thing. It was like, okay, I gave in. Because you know what? I was willing. I was willing to change because I was tired of being in pain. You know, I was tired of being.
What a great answer.
Tired of being in emotional pain, you know, and I was tired of fighting. And that's the thing. I was fighting myself the whole time.
It quit working for you, and I think that's really important for people to understand who don't have this disease. That when we drink alcohol, when we take drugs, it instantly changes our perception of life. I'm taller, I'm stronger, I'm more handsome, and you are much less threatening. You know, you take that away, and it's just almost exaggerated to a degree that's very difficult to understand. So what you're going through right now, the rage, the pain, it's all very real and coming to a head.
Yeah, and that's what it was. And so I went into treatment, and you know, the treatment center wasn't that far from my house. So the whole time I'm making reservations, right? I'm out of here, you know, and I was. And then I started thinking about it, and my plan originally was, okay, I'll stay here. I'll stop the pills. I'll just get out and drink and smoke weed. That was my plan, you know.
A lot of us have had the
week
same
and a
one.
half. That's what I thought. I was like, this is cool. That's what I'll do.
Because beer and weed are vegetables and food.
Right.
Yeah, right.
That was going to be my maintenance program. Mm-hmm. And so about the second week into treatment, I don't know. It was a spiritual experience for sure. I got out of dinner one night and came outside and I started looking at the sunset, and it just hit me. I was like, holy crap! I was like, I'm actually looking at the sunset. I don't remember the last time I looked at a sunset, you know, and it was just amazing. It was amazing. Because I was willing and open to change, and that's why it worked for me. And
I wish this was television right now so that we could see your eyes as you talk about this. The whole demeanor of your face has just completely changed in front of me.
It totally changed my outlook and my perspective on life, because I didn't know how to live, and that was why I was eating, drinking, and drugging. That's what it was. It was because I didn't know how to live my life, you know. Here I am, 31 years old in treatment, and I'm starting to do the first time things that I have been wanting to do my whole life, you know. And I have a son, and I have a wife that loves me to death, and I was just killing myself, you know. And he needed his dad to be around, you know. And I started looking at that. I'm like, wow, my son's 7 years old, you know. And I'm like, I missed a lot of that, like a lot. I remember, you know, the greatest gift that I had this year was being able to be there for my son for Christmas, because I was in treatment in Christmas 2012. You know, 2011 was that Christmas I was in treatment, mm-hmm. and that kind of messed me up. But I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna go into treatment, and that's one Christmas for the rest of my life. You know, I'll give that away. And then it was totally awesome this year because I actually got to be there with him, and that was so cool, because I remember his first Christmas, and I remember this Christmas. I don't
Big
remember the ones
difference.
in between.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
I don't remember those. And my wife would show me pictures, and I'll just cry because I don't remember any of it. I have no recollection of it all. But now I'm making new memories, and that's what counts. Making new memories and being there physically and mentally for my son is what it's all about. You know, because this disease has killed my friend, it's killed family members of mine, and it's real. You know, this is something. It's not something I like to play around with. This is what it. You know, working the steps and working on me and making my coping skills better, because that's my issue, is the coping skills.
It's all of our issues. We don't have any.
Right.
And you know, and I know this to be a fact for you, and I think that you understand it, and I hope that so many others will, that the 12 steps of our program of Alcoholics Anonymous are a blueprint for living. It gives us those 200 words in those 12 steps is an absolute guideline for us to be able to learn and to function in society in a healthy, happy, and free manner.
Definitely. And it opens up new ways of living. It's totally crazy. You know, all the resentments I had towards my doctors and in the hospital and everybody in high school and people I thought were hating on me and all that stuff, it's gone. It's like, it's gone.
And I think that's significant you bring that up, because in our addiction, we carry that resentment that happened
like
30 years ago.
It's like luggage.
Exactly.
You know?
And have yet to process it in adulthood. And that's, again, the 12 steps are designed to deal with that. And that's been happening in your life. I've been watching it.
It's amazing. You know, and I'm not saying that I don't have issues now, because, you know, I do.
Life
and I
on
go to
life's
therapy
terms.
to deal with that. You know, there's trials and tribulations that we go through every day. And that was one of the hardest things I had to overcome this past year, was dealing with that stuff. I'm like, what is all this stuff keeps happening? Like, there's always something going on. Because it was going on, but I wasn't present for it. I wasn't there, you know? So now I'm getting used to it. It's like every day things are going on and I didn't realize it. But now I'm starting to live my life like a normal human being, you know, functioning in society.
Trudging the road to a happy destiny.
Yep.
That's why we chose you, because we've watched you in this journey, and it is absolutely remarkable what you have put into it and the reciprocation that you have gotten back. Because those 12 steps, that guide to living, that blueprint for living, provides for us a spiritual awakening. And that certainly has occurred in your life.
Yeah, it definitely has. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to work in the field now. And it's amazing. You know, it's hard to watch sometimes, you know. And honestly, the hardest part is seeing the families that come in and they're, you know, they're upset that their family members were doing this. And it opens my eyes up, because I'm like, wow, what was I doing to my family? You know, what their feelings and all of that stuff, and just the sadness. And
the point is, though, is what you are doing now to reciprocate that into what we're doing for these families. And for those of you, let me just catch you up. AJ works at a treatment center, and really in the most difficult job, and that is transporting the patients into treatment, no matter what kind of condition that they are in, and they are in some bad shape. Not just them, but their families. You're the one who's making that very first encounter. It's very difficult, and it's extremely challenging, and you're doing it, and you seem to really like it.
I do like it a lot. You know, it like I said, I was a truck driver, so I was delivering freight. Now I'm delivering people, but it's like to a new life. You know, it's like you drive them there, and it's like you're giving them a gift. That's what it is.
What's it like when you pick up somebody who is so horribly addicted to, we'll say, opiates, and you know that for you to be able to get them to the treatment center, they got to shoot up, or they're not going to make it. And you see them maybe at times in that car come close to death. I know you've seen that. And then, you know, a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever it is, when you take them back healthy and whole, just if you can find the words to tell us what that's like.
Honestly, it's a miracle. It really is. It's God's work, and it's like the front lines of it. You know, you see them come in battered and bruised, and you see them walk out with this glow, and they want to do it. And they want to get their lives back together, you know. And I see myself doing it every time, you know. And I see myself when I see them getting better. I'm like, wow, this is cool, you know. And they look at me and they're like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And I'm like, yeah, you're exactly right. You know, you can, because I was a hot mess. I was bad shape, but I came from the depths of hell, and now I'm living my life, and I'm going to continue to.
You know, you defined it. You know, our literature describes this disease as the torture of body, mind, and soul. That's in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's also in another book, the Bible, and it's the description of hell, the torture of body, mind, and soul. And I firmly believe that any of us who have had this disease and have gotten to that point that you have, and I have experienced also, have experienced hell, literally. I absolutely believe that. So the good things in life for us just put us that much closer to heaven and working for the family business. And that is what you're doing right now, is you're working for the family business. You're not working for a treatment center. You're working for God. And let's face it, when that drug addict or that alcoholic screams out those words that we all have, God help me, who does he send? AJ. You're the first one to get there. That's really working as a direct agent for this power greater than ourselves. And that is something for you, son, not to take lightly.
It's just been an amazing process, and sometimes it's almost surreal at moments, and you just see God working all throughout. I see it throughout my life all the time, like the people I meet, like for you, and for instance, like I'll never forget the first time I met you with Randy, my sponsor, and I heard your story. I was just like, wow, it's crazy. It was just amazing. I mean, that you could come from there and do what you're doing, and do what you love. And that's just amazing.
See, we're both doing it today. We're
right.
Miracles, bro. We're miracles. Ladies amazing. And gentlemen, if you ever had a doubt that there are miracles, if you ever said, I'll not believe in a miracle till I witness one, you just did. Thank you, AJ. You're the
Thank
best.
you.
Trudge the Road is sponsored by the Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, specializing in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females. They've got a great relapse program. They've got great outpatient services. And what they do is they understand your pain. If you are concerned about yourself, if you're concerned about a loved one, talk to somebody who understands. Call this number, 800-854-6023. Check out the website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. That does it for this episode of Trudge the Road. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you'd like to catch prior episodes, you can visit our website, trudgetheroadradio.com, and keep listening for new episodes on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Thank you for listening to Trudge the Road. The opinions expressed in the show are those of myself, Jerry, my co-host, Rich, and our guests, and not necessarily those of the Caron Treatment Centers. For more information regarding the show, go to our website, trudgetheroadradio.com. There is a new phase of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.